This is a presentation of the Pitch Podcast Network.
Hello, and welcome to the Streetwise podcast, a production of The Pitch out of Kansas City. I am your host and the editor-in-chief of The Pitch, Mr. Brock Wilbur. How are things with you out there? We just put to bed the latest issue of The Pitch. It will hit stands on the 1st. It covers a very relevant topic as a theme through and through. I really hope you enjoy. Or don't enjoy, because we're covering some dark stuff, and we're covering some dark stuff in a positive way. You'll understand when you see it. It took something out of all of us, I think. So that is sent off to the press, and I am in Chicago, Illinois, here on beautiful Michigan. So if you hear all of the police sirens and fire truck, it's always fun here in Chicago. It's good to be home. Having a great time here with a member of our staff. We are at the Alternative News Conference with all the other alts, the other publications like us in the country, where, boy howdy, everyone out there is doing their best. And it's just fascinating to finally meet a lot of people that I've wanted to meet from places all over the Midwest, all over the coasts. Everyone I've ever said, hey, I can't wait to get a drink with you someday, they're all here. So an exciting time. Anyway, we've got a quick episode for you here today, and then we are going on our summer break for a month or so, because doing this every week is a lot, and it is time to take a little rest up. Excited to see you guys at the end of that. Anyway, first one up today, we have a reading of Auteur Theory by Brock Wilbur. This is about the band making movies. I absolutely adored getting to put this together. I hope that you enjoy it. Jason from Stolen Dress Entertainment, take it away.
Auteur Theory, an extreme close-up on making movies long shot, by Brock Wilbur. I'm overdue to head home for a family holiday celebration. I've postponed because there is an event taking place here in KC for which I struggle to find an appropriate way to dial in my expectations. A group of musicians is throwing a year-end bash that seems both fantastical in scale, but equally an infraction on some ill-defined level. What they're setting out to do breaks an unspoken rock and roll rule, and I need to be there in person to witness the grand spectacle and/or catastrophic misfire. They're going to cover the entirety of Radiohead's album Kid A on its 20th anniversary. Making Movies promised in an interview earlier with The Pitch that they'll be taking one of the bleakest electronic albums ever recorded and turning 50 minutes of unyielding existential dread into a block party. I'm not aware of it yet, but this gig will wind up serving as my introduction to a band that can't simply be enjoyed, but demands to be celebrated. Who else would dare to promise that they can make the Debbie Downer vibes of Radiohead's 2001 album fun? Making Movies is composed of immigrant brothers Enrique Chi, vocals, guitar, and Diego Chi, bass, along with Juan Carlos Charron, percussion, keys, from Mexico, and Duncan Burnett, drums, from Kansas. Since 2009, the group has toured the world, been nominated for a Latin Grammy, and featured on NPR multiple times. Their mix of cumbia, psychedelia, American roots, son cubano, and spoken word, all passed through a heavy rock and roll filter, is so singular that it becomes its own genre. Enrique Chi was born in Santiago, Panama, and moved with his family to Lee's Summit, Missouri, when he was only 6 years old. We moved to this suburb because there was a great ESL teacher there, Chi says. She taught me English, but she made it feel safe to learn. There were only 12 immigrant kids that would go to her for education, and we literally took the short bus to grade school. She also went above and beyond with the families of her students, helping them fill out tax paperwork or deal with other facets of life in the United States. I don't know what my perspective on America would be without her, especially with the way American kids would treat us. I'm not sure without her that I would be able to handle the country I see now, reflected on social media and in the post-Trump era. From an early age, he was fascinated by the sounds of bands like Dire Straits. At 9 years old, my dad bought me this little crappy classical guitar, Chi laughs. It was so cool because it rattled so hard and was so cheap that it actually wound up sounding a little like an electric guitar, which I loved. Chi would later find friendship and musical partnership mostly through a church his family attended, but his belief in a higher power began to waver, and sought opportunities to create elsewhere. The music of everyone from Steely Dan to South African instrumentals began to brew into a blend of influences that would help define the sound he'd begin chasing. We had an alternative rock band and we were offered this opportunity to play some big shows and maybe have a song on the radio, Chi says. They gave us this contract and I didn't understand what it meant, so I took it to a local guy named Bill Rush. Bill said not to sign it because it said these people would own our soul, so I started working for Bill as an intern. Chi's work under Rush would teach him the intricacies of the music industry. Unlike most musicians that simply dream stardom will find them by sheer luck, Chi set his expectations on becoming a normal day job studio musician and developing an understanding that would eventually allow making movies to leapfrog years that other bands may have wasted while waiting on the world to find them. By the time the group was ready for mainstream attention, Chi understood how to get invited on NPR Tiny Desk concerts and industry showcases. The only real hurdle was finding a way to make their sound work. The idea for our sound was this aggressiveness of alternative rock, but with our understanding of Panamanian-centric rhythms, Chi says. More or less an abundant mindset as a melting pot, so you get a bunch of the Cuban stuff and the salsa music. Puerto Rico takes the claim for reggaeton as a genre. We had a very nascent understanding of it. We hadn't found the right drummers yet. People were playing it with an outsider's understanding. I kind of knew that could pair with rock and roll risks, and would have been kind of amazed that no one was doing it. Santana meets Sonic Youth. Since 2013, the band has released 3 albums, each with increasing fiscal and critical success. As a group dedicated to the art of storytelling, each of the albums has a conceptual through-line and a narrative arc. A la Deriva is about an immigrant family that succumbs to the pressure that America places on outsiders, and the impact this inflicts on the generation beneath them. I Am Another You is a tale of 3 people from different parts of the world, and the tragedies in their lives, but reveals that these are all actually one character. It is May 2022, and I am at a pickleball restaurant that is about to become high-profile group therapy, followed by a loud concert. Making Movies has helped arrange an event to discuss mental health for musicians, and to serve as a graduation concert event for the kids from Rebel Song Academy, a digital sister program to an organization founded by the band called Arts as Mentorship, which allows kids from across the metro to not only learn an instrument, but to have access to studio facilities and other technical and spiritual guidance. It's one of a half-dozen non-musical side projects that make you wonder, where do they find the time? 11 years ago, we were in San Antonio, Chi says. We saw these punk kids, and they were standing up for everything they cared about and sharing their work, and we realized we didn't need to wait to have a much larger platform in order to make change in the world. You can just get started doing it, right now. While in high school, local musician Dia Jane entered the program. That was my first experience, being in KC and having someone who built a genuine career in music telling me that I could do it too, Jane says. And that's not just motivational soft skills bullshit. It was a sincere insistence that I was going to make this happen. Jane is one of a dozen musicians that I've written about in the last few years at The Pitch, who considers the work of making movies and this program to be responsible for her ability to have a career in the industry. Ever since I was a kid, people kept telling me I had this great voice and all this talent, and all that I needed was to get into a studio, Jane says. But how do you get into a studio? My family didn't have any wealth to put me up in one. Suddenly, through Arts' mentorship, I have access to all these resources. And out of nowhere, maybe they'd just bring Brandon Yang me into the room in the middle of me recording. I wasn't prepared for that. The younger kids didn't know who he was, but I was pretty startled that suddenly I was performing for someone from the greeting committee. Over the summer, the band finished construction on a new rehearsal space and recording studio, which will serve as a permanent base of operations and central hub for the mentoring program. It is the eve of the Zopa release, the band's first album since Americana 3 years prior. Chi and I chat for the last time before this story heads to press. The second single, Sala de los Pecadores, has been out since April and features one gigantic brutal guitar riff on repeat that only appears to become louder and thicker as the track pummels forward. Yesterday, the music video for title track Zopa released, featuring a high-end short film wherein not even a plane crash can prevent the members of Making Movies from continuing to annihilate the chords of another near-barbaric earworm. In our career in blending these influences, we've been told to be careful if you're building a Frankenstein. When you're building a Frankenstein, it still has to walk. Don't put the arm where the leg goes or it's going to hobble. What makes the new album special is that we built a functional Frankenstein. Now it just feels good. Sometimes our old music was conceptually exciting. The theme and thesis were exciting. This is the first time one of our albums feels like it fully merges our ideas in just the ability to listen and immediately enjoy it, says Chi. From start to finish, the 10 tracks of Zopa feel like Making Movies' best opportunity ever to break into some form of the mainstream music world. But for a band from the Midwest, who mostly performs in Spanish, this is a bit of a big ask from that same mainstream audience, based on how they've received non-English music in the past. In the lead up to the album drop, the band has crisscrossed the country, playing industry showcases to get their music in front of the kinds of folks who decide which bands get their music in TV shows and advertisements. So how do you sell making movies to the decision makers when they might not be buying exclusively Spanish language rock tracks? We're getting onto a lot of big festivals in other parts of the world, she says. But we aren't getting invited to things at the level of a Coachella in the United States. 10 years ago, we were pushing our first record and trying to make this crack in the wall, sneak into the scene. That album was split, half English songs, half Spanish songs. We weren't getting booked, and our manager at the time suggested we try something based on an old Charlie Pride story. He started just sending out press information that we were a rock band from Kansas City, including the English-speaking songs only, like our cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World, and in no way mentioning that we were this blend of styles and languages. And we got booked. We wound up doing that again in 2018, and it worked again. Sometimes, she admits, he gets mad as hell about it. It's the ignorance. This is the only country in the world that expects all of its entertainment to come in its own language. If you're in Latin America or Europe, they're fully down for whatever you're bringing to the show. You need a wider worldview. I try to let go of some of that anger, but you wish so much for people to find empathy. Back to December and the Truman. The lights go down and 4 men take the stage. The opening notes of Kid A's Everything in Its Right Place fills the cold winter venue, and a wave of cheers push through the crowd. Almost immediately, the stark and pensive brood of the original recording is toppled by Latin percussion elements. There are guitar solos. By the mid-song, those in attendance have pivoted into a full-on dance party. And for the next hour, this never lets up. They did it. They pulled it off, and it is glorious. Kid A is now Kid Chi, and there is no going back. The band takes the stage for an encore, and a Spanish-language cover of Radiohead's I Might Be Wrong turns into a 10-minute jam session. I start to feel like I've seen an event that is not just special, but singular. Throughout the evening, Making Movies is joined on stage by more than a dozen guests from other bands. Brandon Yangmi of the Greeting Committee comes out with his guitar to add yet another layer to an already explosive wall of sound. Dia Jane serves as the lead singer for one of the tracks. Co-owner of Record Bar, Steve Tulipana, absolutely annihilates the vocals on a cacophonous full jazz band version of the national anthem. Every person on this stage can trace their success in some way to the contributions made by a band formed by immigrant kids who grew up in the KC suburbs and cannot seem to stop paying it all forward. Making Movies is not making a documentary about themselves. Making Movies is shooting a Technicolor, manic Hollywood blockbuster, telling a story that belongs to this entire city.
And now it's time for Nick's Music Corner.
Hello, I'm Nick Spacek, music editor for The Pitch, here with this week's local music recommendation. One of the latest singles from Drew Black is a slow and spooky number which echoes the lyrical content for which Black was known during his time fronting the glam rockers Drew Black and Dirty Electric. Though that group has been gone from the scene for nearly 5 years now, Black's singles output over the last year or so has been regular, bordering on prolific. Additionally, he released the full-length album, Codeine, in January of this year, and has already followed it up with several singles. One of the latest, You Almost Burnt Me Down, released on July 1st, features not only a regular version, but a demo take, and one which features his vocal collaborators, the sisters, Wendy and Katie Cray, taking the lead while Black sings backup. Regardless of which of the 3 versions to which you choose to listen, the song is mournful and eerie, featuring only vocals and guitar, as though it's a dirge for a lost relationship. You can snag all of Drew Black's new music at drewblack13.bandcamp.com. Here's You Almost Burnt Me Down.
Storms, you can feel them in swarms and hurt. I don't know where we're going either. Probably somewhere trapped in the ether. My gown nurses filling their purses. saffron worshipers. They don't know where we're going either. Probably somewhere trapped in the ether.
Okay, I just got to have lunch in the lobby of the Intercontinental Hotel here, a very fancy place. And what is the fancy restaurant in the lobby of our hotel? Why, it is Michael Jordan's Steakhouse. Michael Jordan's Steakhouse. Just the three most Chicago words you could possibly put together. Did it live up to the hype? Absolutely. Yes, let's say that it did. Anyway, got one more reading here for you from Jason. This is the 18th Street fashion story that we ran 2 magazines ago. This is by Emeline Hutton. So I hope you guys really enjoy it. Here we go.
Girls Runway the World, West 18th Street Fashion Show puts our city on display, by Emeline Hutton. The West 18th Street Fashion Show started at dusk on June 11, 2022. Due to heated impending weather circumstances, what once was supposed to be an outdoor show with spotlights illuminating the runway and live music seeping through the evening air was quickly hustled inside to the safety of AC. The show was originally set to be staged upon the streets outside of the Bower, a historic warehouse in the Crossroads district. The threat of impending thunderstorms left stagehands and set attendants tasked with rapidly packing up microphones, speakers, and bleachers to an interior location. Metal arches that were supposed to line the original runway were transported inside to embellish street-facing windows. A new last-minute runway was crafted within the Bower's ballroom, a masterwork of MacGyvering from the production crew behind one of the city's most expansive live performances. Instead of walking a straight line down the street, stopping at the end of the runway and turning around, the models took a path in the shape of a rectangle, walking the perimeter of the ballroom. The spotlights were replaced with string lights, and the pavement was swapped out for a hardwood floor. With such a short turnaround time for an event that was prepared to be outside for months in advance, the West 18th crew pulled it off without a hitch to be seen by the public. A phenomenal feat for the kind of production with hundreds of hours dedicated to perfecting its every frame. Peregrine Honig, senior artistic director, has been with the show since its inception in 2000. After this year, she'll be passing the torch to Missy Issa Moore, who will take over the same role starting with next year's show, becoming West 18th's leader and head of operations. But as much as strong leadership matters in this situation, the artistic thrust of this gigantic fashion production is as delightfully unhinged as the artists behind it insist upon. Honig reminded the public that every year West 18th comes with a bit of delightfully unpredictable chaos. I mean, no one really knows what fine art is anyway, Honig says of the unpredictable nature of fashion presentation. That's the whole point. For the designers, the show offered the opportunity to show off their collections to the public. Courtney Varner, co-owner of Needaloo Handmade, says that the Medusa pendants featured in her collection had already come to fruition, so the show's theme of Summer Coliseum seemed like the perfect opportunity to show them off. The list of designers for the show included 3 Mink, René LaRouge, Craig Roner, Birdies, Needaloo Handmade, Red Hair Leather, 2S Design House, and Zaid Faruqi. From leather apparel to unisex daywear, these creators showed off their artistic talents, alongside their take on the show's theme. All the designers besides Zaid Faruqi are local, and their storefronts can be found online and on Instagram. Faruqi is a Dubai-based designer, but can be found through the same platforms, and serves as a delightful outside influence to expand the boundaries of what this local production can tag in.
And that has been the Streetwise podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please come to thepitchkc.com each and every day of the week where we are doing wild, weird, exciting, and important stuff. I hope you guys enjoy what we are putting out. Feel free to hit me up, Brock at thepitchkc.com, absolutely anytime with story ideas, things that you think we should be tackling on behalf of the community here in Kansas City. Otherwise, again, this is our brief summer break on the show, so I'll see you in a month or so when everyone's back. Otherwise, please follow Nick at NutHousePunks over on Twitter. Please follow our editor at The Black Nerd. You'll really enjoy Terrence's stuff if you like video games at all. And then there's me at Brock Wilbur, and of course, The Pitch at thefastpitchkc.com. So thank you guys very much for listening. If you live in Kansas, please vote no on August 2nd. And begging of you, please vote now. All right, pitching and we'll make it through. Bye, 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 bye.
This was a production of the Pitch Podcast Network. The Pitch is Kansas City's independent source for news and culture. Check out thepitchkc.com to see more podcasts from us, including information for how to subscribe to The Pitch or become a sustaining member. Story ideas or feedback? Write to tips@thepitchkc.com. Pitch in and we'll make it through.